Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Druker traveling event presentation. Okay, as you can see, today is a very special event. We see that we are also wearing a special treatment. Thank you very much for your kindness. I think some of you know that very well, but the traveling fellowship was established in 1986 by Ronald Druker. And we are delighted that Ron and his daughter Kim are here with us today. And thank you for being here. The Druker Traveling Fellowship is the GSD first international focused travel fellowship dedicated to urban design. It was created already 40 years ago, meaning 4 decades. And we are going to present today the 39, and Elyjana is going to contribute into that and giving the importance of that. And I'm sure that some of you have been attending some of these presentations. You're going to see that every presentation is completely different. That's the way that for us, the GSD is opening a different window every year. I think that is because of the contribution of Ronald Druker that he is here with us. As I was saying, this is the fellowship that offers our students the opportunity to travel abroad or domestically to pursue the study of the advances in their understanding of urban design and the environmental issues in general. That awareness to our leaders in the design and the creation of new forms of environment in the challenges that we are facing today. And they have the capacity of sharing their experience with the GSD community through a lecture on the completion of their travel. That is what's going to happen today. Tonight, we are very fortunate because we have the person that created the fellowship here with us. Ron Druker has been following the GSD trajectory from the last 5 decades as a faculty member, as a Lloyd Fellow, and has served as a key member of several strategic planning committees over the years. The GSD is fortunate to have him as one of our long-standing benefactors, and that's the reason that allow me to invite Ron Druker to come to the podium to address a few words to the audience. Please join me in welcoming Ron.
Thanks. So this gives new meaning to edible art, and it would be dangerous to wear around Halloween here. Anyway, look, I say this each time I speak at this event, that it was really, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here as opposed to have funded something from my grave. And all 40 of the fellows are people I've met and spent time with. And young William is here, fellow number 1. And but it's really, travel to me is very important, and I'm sorry that, you know, Dean Jerry McHugh passed away within the last year, and he was a friend, and he, like any good dean, tries to enhance the life of the school, and he and I were friends, and we were talking, and that's how this fellowship was created. And frankly, thanks to Harvard management, the stipend, the prize, is pretty significant these days. And there was a time when I was approached, maybe by Alex, a former student of mine, to to split the prize in half and give it to two, and I said no. I want it to be significant, and it is, and I think it allows the fellows, and Elyjana, you and Bill can trade notes, but I think it was the stipend's a little bit different than when number 1 traveled versus number 39, I guess, and not that there's been inflation or anything, but anyway. I've been to New Zealand, and I've been to that part of the world, and I'm looking forward to your presentation, but I really appreciate all of your being here, and I guess that's all. Congratulations, and I'll be listening. Thank you.
Let me introduce our speaker tonight. Elyjana Roach is an MAUD 22.
Excuse me 1 second.
Yeah.
I was told I was supposed to do this, okay, and I'm going to do it.
Sure.
I forgot.
Feel free.
So I mentioned the 40 years, but there was a thought of having a celebration tonight afterwards, and there are people from your neck of the woods in Australia and others who were scattered around the world, and for them to have shown up tonight would not have been possible. So it's been announced to the fellows to give them fair warning. So a year from now, I think it's April 22nd, okay? Oh, there you go. I even have a memory. So April 22nd will be a terrific day, and we haven't decided exactly how it will be celebrated, but you heard it first here, if not up there. So I did what I'm supposed to do.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ron. Our speaker tonight is going to be Elyjana Roach. She is a MAUD 22. Elyjana is a Samoan Australian architect and urban designer from Porirua, and currently she is the director of community regeneration in the Central Pacific Collective. It's a Pacific-led organization dedicated to driving Pacifica communities, and her work uses design, policy, placemaking, and Pacifica culture to advance social change and community well-being. For the past 2.5 years, she has been the lead designer and strategic thinker for the Father Our Fail. It is a 300-home Pacific-led multi-generational housing initiative rooted in indigenous values and shared ownership. Working closely with the CEO and Samoan Matai, Whai Amatuani Tino Pereira, who is among us, and he is going to introduce part of the speech this evening. She is helping to shape places where tradition and innovation are meeting together, where the heartbreak of the Pacific village can be felt for generations. Tonight, as the Druker Fellow, Elyjana will explore the communal village green as living expression of Baha, the Pacific concept of relational space that binds people, place, and environment together. Through stories from elders and community leaders, she will show us how these spaces anchor ceremony, governance, and identity while adapting to contemporary urban life, and how this wisdom informs projects like Our Fail, that is the project that she is going to present. With this lecture, we see the importance of the Druker Fellowship in bringing back to the GSD a fresh and grounded perspective on housing, on community, on urban governance, in that case, from the Pacific. Please join me in welcoming Elyjana Roach.
Ta lofa lava, malo lava le soifua, ma le langi e mama. My name is Elyjana, and I would like to thank Ron for not splitting it in half. It's a great honour to be here and a great honour to receive this fellowship amongst distinguished people who have come before, and also to meet Kim and have the alumni here. Juan Bosquets, thank you very much. Just to be in this place, be amongst friends, being amongst family, and brings a familiar context, which is really comforting. So thank you. So after the GSD, I spent a little bit of time in New York, and I think this is important to give context as to how I kind of came about the Druker Fellowship. And my visa ran out, and that's the real reason why I went back home. No, I'm joking. Actually, this man sitting in front of me had presented something to me that actually was an opportunity for me to go back to my hometown in New Zealand, which is right at the bottom there. And this is the beautiful village that I am from, the Pacific Ocean. It's a very large village. It's intimate, yet incredibly big. And there's, over 20,000 islands that are part of our village, over 15 nations that are part of our village, all have their own intricacies, and all incredibly generous and beautiful in their own way. And I'm most proud to be from this place. So coming from the GSD, being able to go back home to serve my community was the biggest opportunity in my eyes. So the Druker Fellowship was in parallel to the opportunity to serve people and actually transform their lives. And it's my great honour to have with me join Tonga, who's the CEO of Central Pacific Collective, who will share a little bit about the project that was in parallel to the Druker Fellowship. So I knew that this project was coming up to build up to 300 homes of affordable housing to change the life outcomes of our Pacific families. We've got families from around the Pacific that have come and joined the cousins in New Zealand, and it all culminates in this project. And so that's what we'll be speaking to you about, how this ancient wisdom from across the Pacific comes to this one place that we're going to be talking about in New Zealand, and how that might be an opportunity for us to think differently about the places that we live in and the places that we design. So with that, please welcome me in joining Whaamatua Inu Tina Pereira.
Ni sampola vinaka malo elelei ke nana kato tau katoa taloha ni aloha ma uke fa klowaku de pe ia maulungo le malu le afiafi o kulanga fa lu pele ko o ia se fa kalanga le filufi. Our ancestors always eavesdrop on us when we provide presentations like this. And I want to thank this world-renowned institution in terms of its global leadership and scholarship. For me, it was a mere Samoan to be in its presence, and I want to thank you for that. Ron and Joanne have got the edible lei. I've just got the one that's the fountain of youth. So what we're going to present to you is a demonstration of how portable ancient wisdom becomes a living migration. We want to tell a story and to share with you our world view, how the concept or the traditional architecture of Pacific and Polynesia is as much ancient as it is contemporary. And we believe that this is the way forward for the future design of our world. And I thought, coming from the ends of the earth to present for 40 minutes is pretty unfair. So as a Samoan orator, we have no time. We can speak for days. But Elyjana tells me, no, this is hard, you've got your time. So that's why I thought I'd better write it down, because if I speak in Samoan oratory, you will be asleep, wake up, and I'm still here. So bear with me, and I'll read something that provides some context, some accuracy, and hopefully some inspiration. We call the project Our Whare, Our Whale. That's a combination of the Maori tribe that provided the land, and whale is the Polynesian word for a home. This project reflects our life partnership with a tribe that leased the land called Ngāti Toa. At the heart of this is the concept that Elyjana will expound on, called the Malae. This spatial heart of this vision is the Malae, which is not simply open land. It is a living center of Pacific communal life, a place where gathering, ceremony, genealogy, and shared responsibility hold a village together. In that sense, the Malae is portable spatial wisdom, a design logic that can travel, adapt, and remain alive across generations and oceans. It teaches us that a village begins not with a house, but with relationship. It is about the wa, the relational space between people, the land, the environment, its spiritual entities. And then, according to one of our greatest philosophers, our living philosophers, Aotearoa New says it links the Malae to relational cosmology, emphasizing the balance between humans, gods, and nature. It's the space that connects, brought together in harmony in this Malae space. Its guiding principle is anua whale. It is not so much about the house, but about the people living in the house and all of their relationships. The idea matters because it reminds us that architecture is never about form, only about form. It is about kinship, care, identity, and the relationships that make a house feel like home. Our challenge in Porirua was simple to state, but profound to solve. How do we carry the wisdom into a 21st century New Zealand, where Pacific families face significant poor housing standards, barriers to housing affordability, and archaic planning laws? Our answer was not to copy a traditional form literally, but to translate its logic into built form. It is a design-led response to present-day housing need, grounded in Pacific values and responsive to contemporary requirements of affordability, density, and livability. Oahu becomes a village in which homes are not scattered objects, but part of a shared social ecology. The central communal space echoes the Malae. The arrangement of dwellings supports cohesion, neighborliness, and intergenerational life. The project is grounded in Pacific values, but it also responds to contemporary realities, urban density, housing pressure, climate resilience, and the need for home ownership pathways. In that way, Oahu is both ancient and contemporary. It carries the memory of migration from the Polynesian heartlands while re-embodying the memory in Porirua, in Ngāti Toa land. It is a village that says, we did not leave our wisdom behind. We brought it with us, and now we are building it again. We are not importing a form. We are reactivating spatial intelligence, the Malae, and translating it for Pacific families living in 21st century New Zealand or globally. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, the Malae is not a relic of the past, rather a design system for the future. Ia manuia o tātou aso. Saifo.
So va. It is the relational space of deep respect and honour. As Ino mentioned, this is something that is shared intergenerationally, as you see demonstrated here tonight. It is the uniqueness that connects us. And for me, this journey was exposing an identity that our generation is deeply looking for, the connection between each other. As part of looking at what makes a Pacific village, I did in fact visit a handful of projects on the other side, the Northern Hemisphere. And this was primarily to understand their mature view of housing. Housing as human right, including multiple collective housing models, different procurement for affordability, and mixed tenure models, cooperative land trusts, housing aimed at low-income workers with the goal of affordable, high-quality spaces and between private and public. House cost savings made through co-design discussions, and neighbourhood developments with a strong focus on sustainability. Much of this was about the project and of what I would now describe as an outside-in way of building community. It was the project first, the design, the legal structure, and then the belonging to a community that came out of it. But I couldn't help but think that where we're from, we take our community connections for granted. We intuitively live inside out. We live, eat, breathe, sometimes far too closely, our village connections. But the places that most of us live are not the islands. They are, in fact, the places that our parents and our grandparents left as a story of migration. Places close, like New Zealand and Australia, and places far, like the Americas. But as these environments have been capital-led, they have failed us. And as you know, they have failed many. But we didn't leave this ancient wisdom behind. We brought it with us. So we start with the most ancient marae, Tapu Tapu Aotearoa New-a-Kiwa, which is known as French Polynesia. And it's a sacred complex where the worlds of genealogy come in. And what's interesting about this is most of what images I'm showing you are bare open spaces. And so this is a place where actually the activation comes from people gathering, the ceremony that gathers. In this particular location, at the center of locationally Polynesia, is where voyagers would come and meet. And only last year, I think in 2025, they welcomed the Princess of Taiwan, which is where we believe our trace comes back to. So it's this recognition of lineage, recognition of genealogy in one area. In Samoa, the Malae is a proper ground for ceremony, and you can see this exchange of relationships happening in this spatial form. But it's ultimately where the whaamatai, or the chiefly system of governance that's organised Samoan century for years, still exists today. And even though places and villages have changed through urbanisation, these places still form and function. In Tonga, the Malae can be understood as both a ceremonial ground, but things have changed because, there are colonial aspects to it, and they become part of the royal system, and so there's obviously changes. And this word Malae is also used as a word for cemetery, which is also interesting if you think about the way that it represents its connection back to the deceased, or connection back to honouring those who have come before them. Even in natural disasters, which is Hunga Tonga, Hunga Ha'apai, which is one of the world's most colossal submarine volcanoes felt as far as here, the relocation of the village, which is on a different island, and this is in the island of Tonga Tapu, has this Malae in the middle. And so you see this representation of memory, even in a new creation. Across Tahiti and the Cook Islands, many ancient marae are no longer active ceremonial sites, and that says something about the way that those lands have changed in terms of the structure and the colonial aspect. But they still stand as courtyards, and once used as offerings, they still have this memory set within it. In Hawaii, they don't have a marae, but they have what's equivalent to a heiau, and sitting next to the heiau is the pu'uhonua, which is a place of refuge. And there's communities that have kind of named themselves after the pu'uhonua as a way to address some of the houselessness issues. And Hawaii has the highest rates of homelessness in the state of America. And in this community, they house over 250, and they've had private funders that have helped them purchase 20 acres of land to build new. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, Marae is the living heart for Māori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. And despite the history, I say our because I live there, despite the history of its relationships with the Crown and the treaty that has continued to evolve, these places still remain this ultimate function of culture, of honouring relationship. And so there's over 770 of these tribal marae throughout the country, and you've got different functions. You've got the wharenui, which is a meeting house, the marae atea, which is a green space in front of it, and they're separated by the concept of what's tapu, what's sacred, and what's noa, what's the everyday. So these spaces coexist. Marae, the cultural resilience to the space, and they also become places of environmental resilience. So through earthquake, through the cyclone, they become emergency hubs that do a far better job than the government. So they're much better at mobilising. So they actually become these really important parts of the function and the social aspect of our communities that don't just serve Māori, but they serve a wider group of people. In the Wellington region, which is where we live in Porirua, the local iwi, Ngāti Toa, and this is their marae atea, and this is a significant event. This is the marae, and this is a local high school that's welcoming 13 different Pacific ethnic groups onto their marae. And this is the first time multiple languages have been spoken in one house. And this is about the exchange, the ceremony, the relationships that honour across the Pacific. And out of that manaakitanga, what is a deep hospitality, there's these words in our Indigenous cultures that don't quite translate the same way to English, and manaakitanga is a Māori word that is one of those things. So it's hospitality, taking care of, generosity. And so out of the local iwi who live in our area, this is the relationship that is now opened the doorway to our whare, our whale, which is the project for 300 homes in Porirua East. So because they know that we're all cousins, we all come from the same place, and they have a different connection to their land, they have extended their generosity to us to address social housing and housing issues and well-being and health and so forth. So that leads us to our whare, which is the project that we've been involved in for the last few years.
This moment has been a long time coming.
Today is about breaking ground, or the turning of the sod, to begin the celebration of the building of 18 of the 300 Pacific houses that Central Pacific Collective is going to be building for our community here in Porirua East.
Breaking new ground, a partnership between iwi and Pasifika with the goal of building 300 homes in the next 10 years.
We're very fortunate enough that Ngāti Toa, the local iwi, decided to provide us with the land. Because if we didn't have land, there is no way we're ever going to build this kind of project or this kind of development. So through their extraordinary generosity, they said, we will lease you the land, we'll provide you the land, but you go and find the money to build them.
And find the money they did. In Budget 2022, a total of $115 million was awarded for the project.
Oh, it's massive. You know, as people will know, our Pasifika families have really low rates of home ownership. This is a pathway towards home ownership for them.
It's a blueprint Mana MP Barbara Edmonds wants to see replicated across the country.
This is a first, but it's also a reflection of that tuakana taina relationship, that manaakitanga that our tangata whenua are giving Pacific communities. So if we can do it here in Porirua East, we can do it right across the country.
And it has strong support from local iwi.
Ngāti Toa, my Māori katoa, are Pasifika people as well. All our people believe in the tikanga of manaaki, of looking after others. All of us do.
The homes have been designed with Pasifika living in mind.
For the houses themselves, we have 4-bedroom, which actually can be used as a 5-bedroom. And what we've done practically is make sure that these larger houses can accommodate for our grandmas and our granddads that age in place.
Even the way the homes face each other has been inspired by the Pacific way of living.
So traditional urban design, traditional houses and traditional developments that happen here in New Zealand usually face the street. And the unique aspect of this project is that luma, or front, is the centre. So it faces centre.
And with construction now underway, it's important Pacific people get their finances sorted so they can join the waitlist and realise their home ownership.
I think it's their home ownership. That's all right, we can keep going. So the context, this is Porirua, this is 5 minutes from my house. My auntie's live on the street, so it's a very personal project, and so kind of the travel fellowship allowed me to bring this context of housing and knowledge that's shared between intergenerations to reveal in this one place. And so it's a place that mostly has social housing, and so a lot of people don't even think that they could, you know, aspire to something like home ownership or a different kind of tenure. But the context is that the government was putting $1.5 billion into infrastructure in the ground, and out of that they enabled more housing to be built here. So just very quickly, spatially you can think about the Malae like this. You think about va as a point-to-point relationship. So the space is actually all about my relationship to you. It's about one-to-one relationship, and if that breaks down, then you and I have to sort it out. We don't get a judge, we don't get a court system in the place. You put what you've got on your table and I put the same thing on my table, and then we work it through. So that point-to-point is the most crucial part of our culture, of respecting each other, of honouring each other. And to the right, we have a line, which is how most of the Western context operates. We've got va on the left, which is you've got this expansive interconnectedness, so it can kind of multiply, it's effective. where on the right, the Western model of thinking is that this is my boundary. If you break my boundary, I'll sue you. We don't sue in New Zealand, but I know they do that a lot here, and I'm sure Ron would have much more to know about that than I do. And so space is bound, whereas on Va, it's endless. You can continue it. So luma is the front, so everything is faced to the front, whereas on the right, you know, you've got your boundaries, the street, you face the street, you've got your quarter-acre section. So the challenge is actually, how do you put a system like that into a place that operates with a boundary? And so we work with the system and we try and find the best way to do that. So the plan for this project, this is the first 18 out of 300 houses, and this is the first site we're working with. And what you see is there's like the privacy. Does this work? This back, essentially this is like private zones, and depending on where the house is oriented, or the doors like face the front. So the relational space is in the middle. The topography, no site is really flat in New Zealand. And so we've kind of made this flat area up top and made it over with the garden that's on the other side. We have a common whale, which is a really important part for across the Pacific, actually, is this dedicated space that people gather. And these are becoming much more important now. You don't just have somewhere that you digitize your connection online. It's actually creating these spaces, formalize the importance of our connections. So we've got this beautiful place that not only our village can use, but also it's being used by the rest of our community. And I think what's important to grasp is actually to achieve this project, not just the design, but to get it over the line was incredibly difficult. And that is why it was important for me to bring Whamatsu Inu Tino here today, because the way of which our culture works, it's not, we don't have the architect here, we don't have the developer over here, we don't have everybody is working together. And actually the understanding of those relationships is what makes our culture so special. So this is going down to the garden, and you see kind of this relationship of levels that enable a different sense of privacy between the public and the semi-public and private. And this is a 4-bedroom duplex. And so the key part of this one was the whole project is intergenerational depending on what your family type is. And so this 4-bedroom was important for us to have an accessible bathroom on the ground floor and what we call the flex space, which can be an undetermined. So we've got 4 bedrooms at the top. We've got another space that can be used as another bedroom. But, you know, in our cultures, we always think about what happens when our family member dies. What happens when our mum or our dad passes away? How can we bring everybody together? So this space becomes the space where we would host and we would have and hold our loved ones at home. So this is the dining, this is the space that becomes that, whatever you would like it to be, and really important for our cultural practices. And then, you know, allowing the family to choose what they use some of the other spaces in the circulation. The 3-bedroom duplex, and this is a view from the Malae and the garden. So you see this kind of front door aspect, but this is also connected to the front of the Malae. So it depends the orientation of where the sun is and where the Malae is. It kind of is interchangeable. So the 3-bedroom on the ground floor is living, dining, kitchen. The second floor is 2 bedrooms, and this space here is our flex space. So that becomes the flexi. You can use it as another bedroom, or you can use it as a study or office. And one of the things that's translating is across the Pacific, you've got land. So you can build separate places, but here we're trying to accommodate and see how we can do that in a limited space. And the 2-bedroom is a two-story version of the 3, where you get these different sized rooms because of the orientation of the roof. So on the right, the idea is that as these villages grow, they become these secondary interconnected networks, where the space becomes the special sacred, but also the everyday. On the left, all of those blue shaded squares, parcels, those are social housing in that area. So you see how a lot there is. This area above the hill, that's the rich area. So it's separated by this like hill and ravine. And what happens if we increase home ownership by 300 houses in this area, we increase it by 70%. And so how that connects to education and fundamentally their well-being is a huge part. The roof form was really important for us. Across the Pacific, you see these wonderful structures of that connect to these posts, and the posts are connected to the landscape, and that connects to our honouring the deceased below and connecting to the heavens above. And the roof becomes also the wall, which means you get thicker structure, which means you get better insulation. So engineer-wise, it becomes a better functioning house. Warm and dry. Our people are some of the most overrepresented in health outcomes. So it's hard to imagine them at the outcomes of this. The construction, what we do is we make sure that we're procuring local builders, and that's also part of the village model. So all the builders here is a Samoan-owned company, and they employ, so we make sure that the people actually catch the heart of this. And then this is owned by our community. This is part of who they are. And so we did a lot of reaching out, and they made sure that they owned it and told the story as well. We had a lovely big celebration, and it was a big event for our whole community. So there was all our different aspects in one place on the Malae. And these are just some of the images that show you how that space was used in that day. So you see our village connected. We had a festival, and how that place becomes alive in that whole context is you see the difference of height in terms of privacy versus public. This is the heart of it. And you just see that joy. That is the story of migration in one place. And it was a huge achievement for them. This One News was on the leading news network for New Zealand.
Welcome to your place. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
A day this Tongan couple never saw coming.
Very excited. The feeling
It's really hard to explain in good words to the feeling that we had. It still felt unreal. Yeah, that we own a home. A far cry from their cold rental. Manu and Vienna will be moving into their new 4-bedroom home with their young son and Manu's mother. Double clays, very warm compared to upstate house. The memories from the village back in the islands, I know we will be down the road that will arrange things that it's pretty much you look out for each other.
They're pretty much the first ones to design houses like this. If you to drive around corridor, you won't see the designs they have here.
And this is how it's used today. So only 3 of those kids are actually from this village. The rest are from the neighbouring houses, which is just beautiful that they get to enjoy this space. One of the things that was important for us was to have an energy resilience in the scheme, and so we have a micro solar grid that connects back to the shed, and every household benefits. And so something like it ranges from $50 a bill to $150 a bill if you're a 4-bedroom. So it's about half the costs for each household. So it really makes a difference. And our whale lights up in the evening, it becomes like the crown of the jewel. We have what's called a village whono, which is our terminology of a body corporate. So it's unit titled, it's a body corporate, but we use the language to have accessibility for our families. So they're the ones who determine how they use it. And we also make sure that we're supporting existing local communities of what they're doing, like they teach cooking and they come and plant, and so these central Malae become the spaces that already support and uplift the social infrastructure. This is the common whale with the neighbourhood kids. We have what's at the top is called a tapa, and it's a practice of which the women do across the Pacific. And so having these links to memory in these places are really important. And this is also a te vaivo from Cook Islands, and so you see how this kind of, the old and the new come together, but they're both really important at the same time. So our form is relationship. It's not architecture. And so that is grounded in the bones of what the Malae represents. So we'd like to leave a short challenge. The future of design is about story, belonging, dignity, and relationship. Can the Malae, or how can the Malae, reshape how we design cities and neighbourhoods around the world? Thank you.
I know you're all going to say it's brilliant. So.
Hi. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm over here. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. This is a really beautiful presentation and a very beautiful project. Something that struck me was the photo that you showed of the kids biking, and you said half of them don't even live there. And I think I'm curious to hear how there is this kind of balance between creating a space that is for, inward looking to the Malae, to this community, but also exists in a context around it, and how to, I'm curious, when you designed it or as you thought through it, were there challenges in keeping it open enough for a wider community, for a broader context to enjoy the space, but also to preserve it as something that is for the people that are there, and whether that is a tension that exists or whether that's something that was never an issue?
The way that our community works is there is no gap between us as the ones who are doing it and the people who are living there. Everything is like this, which makes it, somebody's washing line, they're like, Elyjana, the washing line is not working, and we have these incredible connections across our community that are already so rich. And so what this project represents is just bringing that to life, because it already is there, but the built environment is not the built environment that enables those to be strengthened in the way that I think represents our Pacific culture in a beautiful way.
So basically what we're saying, Elyjana would talk about the VAR. This is the space that has no boundaries. Whether in a constrained kind of form around home ownership or whether or not you're living separately, the space surrounding it are all part of the VAR relationship. So we extend it. You might wake up one morning and somebody else sleeping in your house. Well, is that the VAR or is that somebody just creeping into your space? Well, we call them both. So, and that's the beauty of this. The VAR extends beyond the boundaries because of the relationships.
How long, it took you, how long, 3 some odd years to do it?
We started working on it in the beginning of 2023, but the sod turning was 2024, so it was built in a year.
And the major challenges were financial?
Yeah.
And so how was it financed? Where did the funds come from to do it?
This is the story around understanding the machine of government, understanding the political system. And when you're a minority group with no assets, very low incomes, access to this sort of funding is quite problematic. But we have built the understanding, the relationship with those in the policy setting. For us, basically, we said to the government, if you lift this boat, then you lift all boats. And we were fearless. We didn't die wondering. We just wanted $115 million. Whoever's in front of us, you better get it. That's the story.
It's never easy.
We'll get the mic.
Sorry, what's the question?
What would the Pakihas like me, I'm a white New Zealander, make of this?
We will extend our generosity for you to live in the space.
Well, yeah, I'd love to, but I'm curious as to what the spin-off has been, if any.
Oh, you mean from outside of the Pacific?
Yes. Outside of the Pacific community.
Community. We have had a significant response from across New Zealand. We've had responses from the construction sector, the build sector, the politicians, the leaders of other communities. A minister responsible for housing policy said to us, your model can be translated throughout all of New Zealand, regardless of race.
Have you begun the next phases?
Yeah, we have. We've got 32 houses being built at the moment right adjacent to it, and we're in the process of knowing what's our next lots and how many we can do, and working with our families to make sure that they're ready and purchasing the house. Yeah.
And it's 300 is the
300 is the goal. 300 is the total goal, and we've just completed the first 18 in December 25. Yeah.
That's the starting point for us.
Yeah, it's really just a starting point.
We kind of said to the government in our business case, this is how much we build. But we know deep in our hearts, we're going to build more. We have a particular funding model which allows for share equity scheme, which means we can build an asset base rather than just an appropriation where if you don't use it, you lose it. So that's the magic of the funding.
But one of the things is, how do we make our community economically resilient? So they come from the islands. How do we form a basis of which they can grow in terms of economic resilience? And housing is a fundamental structure of how that can begin. So we're really just at the start of our journey and with our community to unfold what that looks like. Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of response to your question, Peter, as well. Our business case to the government for the funding is not just about the housing. Ours was based on well-being outcomes. That through housing, it addresses education, health, employment, and a pathway to wealth, which is what our community needs in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that you have some thoughts on that question that you proposed to us. Can the Malae reshape how we design cities and neighborhoods around the world?
Yeah.
You know, let's, you know.
I think because architecture is not the thing, it's the relationship, so it's almost a reverse. And I think one of the things that our culture brings to the world really, you know, anywhere you go, if you're a Pacific person, it's like, oh, this is why. You just kind of have this connection. And actually, I think that is the essence of what we as a humanity can start to expand, because the Malae is not necessarily just about a space. It's about how we extend the generosity with the people that are around us wherever we are.
So basically, our culture defined and informed this living environment. So we didn't start with architecture. We started with the values that the people had. We started about their culture. How do you flourish providing, reimagining in a village concept in a Western landscape? So we started there, and that's how we continue. And we found the money because we started at the values and the culture.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
You talk about the community being able to rise out of poverty, and is the housing owned, or is it rented, or is it owned? By is it a condominium or similar co-op?
It's owned, so it's home ownership, a shared equity, so they can.
So the families own their own space?
Yes.
Yes.
And,
yes.
and I hate to keep coming back to the finance, but I'm just wondering how do they get their financing for the ownership, and what percentage of equity do they need to provide? Because that's how, you know, all of a sudden the equity adds value. And,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and it grows.
So this is an affordable model, which basically means there are three ways we allow or make the households. You got to remember, these are people who never own a home in their lifetime. So what we do, we have three parts. One, it's lease land. So when you lease the land, so that's about 30% of the cost of a house.
Is that typical that the land typically is not a freehold, or does the government retain ownership to it?
No, this is land that's owned by the local tribe.
Yeah.
As part of the settlement. So this is what they own. And because of our linkages to them, they've decided, okay, we will lease you our land in perpetuity for very peppercorn. And you just go and find the money to build the houses. So when it's leased, so that's 30% of the cost to the household you don't have to look for. We provide up to 40% from our share equity scheme to further allow them to afford. And because we have a deal with the bank, that's the debt lender, they raise up to just 5% deposit for that. And then of course, because we're a community developer building at scale, we don't pass on any development margins whatsoever. So in essence, basically, we are building these homes and selling them at about 20 to 30% below market. But it means the affordability. It allows these people who never ever owned a home in their lifetime, can you imagine that they'll be looking for a mortgage, which will be 45% less of the cost of the land.
And can they sell that home to anyone, or those people have to meet certain income requirements? And can it be sold at a profit for the seller to raise some money for themselves?
Well, there are two parts of it. Because it's an intergenerational model.
Yeah.
You sell it to your family. So you pass it on from family to family as part of our intergenerational living. But also it future-proofs, make sure that your family continues to have a home that they own. But when they do sell...
So to your question, culturally, I'm not sure that travels. You know? I mean, culturally, it wouldn't necessarily work here. It can continue to work in New Zealand and maybe in other places in Polynesia.
Our
True?
ambition is to own our own land.
Yes.
And build the same model. There'll be different calculations on the cost, but that's our ambition, is to build the same model.
But as you said in the beginning, it's cultural.
Yeah, I think there's multiple different ways that you can look at it, because there's the finance part, there's the design part, but there's also the values part. And so I think the parts that can be taken across land can be the values part, because it might not necessarily be the land or the finance. But I think as a people, there are values within our Pacific culture of deep respect and honour. And that's what I think the
And that's the
is.
point.
Yeah.
It looks like we have to wrap up. But so the reason why the concept traveling is difficult and passing from family to family is difficult, at least in this country and the way we seem to do things, is that people are all over the place. So you go to college in California and maybe you stay out there, or so the concept, which I think used to be much more common, like the triple decker here in Boston, in Southie, and I have kids living in Southie now, and they're in people's what used to be family homes that were passed for a number of generations, which is now kind of coming to an end. So the concept of what you're talking about, how would you do that in a kind of a civilization where people are so mobile?
In terms of
what you're talking about, is that?
Yeah, well, I think that was a point I was trying to make with the three aspects of it: the land, but the values. I think the values are the most important part.
Right.
And I think if you look at the values, that answers most of the other questions. That can answer how you look at a house, or how you look at intergenerational passing, or what that means, because it comes back to that. And so I think that's the point of the architecture has to follow the values. And so the values, what does that mean? How can these connections of one-to-one relationship mean for a place like this? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the marvelous presentation. I think tonight Okay, thank you very much. I think tonight we have the privilege to see how far the Druker Fellowship is promoting many different approaches and cultures, and we have today the privilege of having this window towards the Pacific. Thank you very much for this fantastic presentation. Thank you. We can now we invite everybody to come to the reception, and then we can continue the conversation that was quite vivid and very interesting. Thank you.